The Japanese Coast Guard approaches a strange yacht that appears to be abandoned. Upon boarding, they see that there is no one inside, and shortly thereafter, something shakes the ship violently, and we learn that a huge explosion occurred deep in the sea, evaporating much of the water due to the intense heat. The Japanese government quickly meets to discuss what happened, and although they do not know the true cause of the explosion, they assume it could be due to an underwater volcanic eruption or a strong earthquake. Shortly thereafter, officials and scientists see on television an enormous tail of an unidentified species emerging from the site of the explosion. Faced with such a threat, the Japanese Prime Minister knows they must act quickly, attempting to neutralize the creature to reassure the population and prevent it from causing further damage. The members of the meeting debate whether they should scare it away, capture it alive, or kill it, but before they have time to think, the enormous monster leaves the bay and heads for a nearby river, where it floods the streets and causes enormous destruction in its path. Several people die and the rest run, trying to leave the area. The scientists warn the Prime Minister that if the creature is not dealt with in time, the consequences of the beast's advance could be very serious. A member of the research team tells their leader, Yaguchi, about a colleague who could help them better understand this creature. Yaguchi accepts the idea, and a woman named Jerome joins the research team. Jerome analyzes several videos and suggests to the others that the creature has 2 legs, so it could leave the river at any moment. However, the other team members do not believe that its legs can support its enormous weight out of the water, so they dismiss her idea and call a press conference to tell the public that there is nothing to fear. As expected, one of the attendees interrupts him and warns him that the creature has managed to get out of the water and is entering the city. The enormous monster walks through the streets, generating small earthquakes with each of its steps and causing enormous damage to cars and buildings. To avoid total chaos and the complete destruction of Tokyo, the Prime Minister calls a meeting, where he gives the order to evacuate the entire population so that the fearsome beast can be dealt with. The emergency team and firefighters are sent out onto the streets to help and guide the population, and the government quickly deploys its armed forces to hunt down the creature. Military helicopters arrive in the city and take up attack positions, warning that they are ready to fire, but the city streets are still crowded with people and it is not safe to carry out an attack, so they are given the order to abort the mission. The helicopters leave, and shortly thereafter, the creature runs toward the sea and returns to the water. The city of Tokyo slowly returns to normal, while emergency services assess the damage and fatalities. In addition, the Prime Minister declares a national emergency and orders the air and naval forces to search the seas for the creature. Officials know that the beast could return to the city at any moment, so they must be prepared. Yaguchi then assembles a new team, made up of experts in all fields and elite members. One of the new members reveals that they have been able to collect a sample of the creature's fluid, which is being analyzed in the laboratory, while another wonders where it gets all the energy it needs to stay alive. No one seems to have the answer, as it is unlikely that the creature obtains its energy by eating, and that is when Jerome suggests that perhaps it obtains its energy from nuclear fission, which makes it even more dangerous. The government studies the area of the explosion and concludes that radiation levels are very high, so Jerome's theory could be true. Meanwhile, the US government representative asks Yaguchi to find a man named Goro Maki, who had predicted the existence of a radioactive creature in the Japanese sea and ocean a few years ago. It turns out that Goro Maki is the owner of the yacht from the beginning, and before his disappearance, he had left several documents on the ship with his research on Godzilla. Thanks to his research, the Japanese government discovers that the creature's name is Godzilla, which means reincarnation of God, and that it is an ancient sea beast that mutated and transformed after ingesting radioactive waste that the Japanese government dumped into the sea. Shortly thereafter, Yaguchi's team discovers that, due to radiation, Godzilla's body temperature has cooled, and that in order to warm itself, the creature has had to leave the water. A few days later, Godzilla reappears in the bay, rapidly approaching the city. When the creature steps onto land, the population panics and everyone runs to escape. As the beast enters the city, the ministers notice that the creature is now much larger and more powerful, so they give the order to attack Godzilla with all their forces to prevent it from causing further destruction. The Japanese army fires at the beast with their helicopters and artillery weapons, but the creature suffers no serious damage, and all they manage to do is make the situation worse, so they retreat to rethink their attack. As night falls, several American bombers arrive in Tokyo, prompting them to ask the population to take shelter underground. One of the advisors informs the Prime Minister that Godzilla is approaching the building, so all personnel must evacuate to another safe area as well. Shortly thereafter, the American bombers drop their powerful bombs on the creature's back, managing to wound it and causing Godzilla to scream in pain. The beast then begins to glow with a distinctive purple color, and soon emits a very strong laser from its mouth that disintegrates and burns everything it touches. The bombers launch a second attack, But Godzilla generates a large number of lasers from its back, disintegrating the missiles before they reach it and destroying all the bombers in the sky. The creature continues to ravage Tokyo, leaving a complete hell of fire and radiation, until finally the beast weakens and becomes virtually immobile, trying to recover its energy. While evacuating the government building, Godzilla's strong attack has killed the Prime Minister and several of his secretaries, so an emergency government is appointed, with a provisional Prime Minister. The government team knows that this is their only chance to kill Godzilla, so they must act quickly and attack before it wakes up. Yaguchi's team believes that one of the beast's weaknesses is freezing, as according to their studies, Godzilla had come out of the sea onto land to warm its body. To this end, the team's scientists investigate the beast's blood and conclude that they will need more than 600 kiloliters of coagulant to inject into the creature in order to freeze its blood. The United States does not agree with this idea and tells the Japanese that if they cannot freeze the beast before it wakes up, they will launch a powerful thermonuclear missile that will kill the creature, but destroy all of Japan as well. Japanese officials dislike this idea, so they call all the laboratories in the world to ask them to produce the necessary chemical to freeze Godzilla. However, they do not have much hope of achieving this before the beast awakens, so they begin to evacuate the population to be prepared in case the United States launches its thermonuclear bomb. Meanwhile, a renowned journalist reveals the life story of Goro Maki. It turns out that Goro Maki's wife died from exposure to high levels of radiation. Goro Maki was devastated by her death, so he decided to devote his life to understanding radioactive materials, and then he discovered that there was a creature called Godzilla, which was mutating due to all the radioactive waste that was dumped into the sea. In addition, the man predicted that Godzilla is a creature that can mutate very easily and could soon come out of the water and destroy everything. Goro Maki warned the Japanese authorities about his research and discoveries, but they believed the man was crazy and paid no attention to him. The last time Goro Maki was seen alive was on his boat, and now that his story is known, everyone has many questions about his disappearance. On the other hand, Yaguchi's team discovers from the subject's research that Goro Maki had predicted that the only possible way to kill Godzilla could be to freeze it. The scientists analyze more samples and learn that Godzilla could be mutating right now, which would give it the ability to reproduce on its own. This disturbing discovery puts more pressure on Japan, because if they don't manage to kill the creature soon, the entire human race could be in danger. All countries and organizations offer their help, and they finally obtain the necessary amount of the coagulant chemical to inject into Godzilla, so the armed forces prepare to begin the final mission. First, they attack the beast, crashing several trains into it, which awakens it. Several military drones then drop their bombs on the creature, but Godzilla activates its defense system and manages to destroy the explosives in mid-air. Godzilla quickly weakens, and the military takes advantage of this moment to detonate the charges they placed on some buildings, causing them to fall on the beast and knock it down. Once on the ground, several trucks carrying the powerful chemical approach the creature's mouth and begin the injection process. Everything seems to be going well, but soon the beast begins to glow and emits a lethal laser from its mouth, freeing itself and standing up. The military sends all the trains in the city to crash into Godzilla, who is somewhat weakened by the coagulant they injected him with, so he cannot defend himself, and the explosion of the trains brings him to the ground again. Once again, the trucks begin to inject the chemical into his body, and after a while, all the coagulant has been released into him. They believe the plan has worked, but Godzilla gets back on his feet. However, the beast soon begins to freeze, and the military declares the mission a success. Shortly thereafter, researchers discover that his body will take about 3 years to decompose. The whole world believes that Godzilla is completely dead and no longer poses a threat, so other countries assist Tokyo and the city begins its reconstruction process. Everything seems to have returned to normal, but at the end of the film, we see many creatures beginning to emerge from Godzilla's tail, letting us know that the threat is not yet over.